Hi, I'm Tris Dixon here for BNTV. I'm with the BBC's Mike Costello. Mike, we were both there in Herning the night that Froch fought Kessler the first time. What do you remember about the fight?
Well, as a commentator, you can often discern which are the most exciting fights by coming off air and being absolutely drained because you've had to describe so many punches and against the backdrop of a ferocious crowd noise as well. And that was one of those nights, and it was one of the best fights I've ever had to commentate on. But long before I was commentating, I was watching boxing, a major fan of boxing, and it's one of the best fights that I've ever seen. And the final round, the 12th and final round, is one of the best rounds that I've ever seen. And what staggers me about where Carl's gone on from that is that it is the type of fight that historically has often finished a fighter or started the descent for them. But Carl looks as if he's improved since then.
How about Kessler though? You know, he didn't fight again for a long time after that because of eye injuries. He's had another long layoff subsequently, although as he's pointed out today, this will be his third fight in a calendar year or in a 12-month span. So, I mean, do you think it's possibly aged Kessler, who was also dropped by Alan Green since then?
Yeah, I think there is a real chance that that's happened. If it hasn't actually affected him physically, I think the notion of that injury and potentially how serious that can be has just, I think, taken an edge off his competitive spirit. I think that physically, apart from that, he's actually the same fighter that he was. But mentally, I just wonder how much of himself he's now prepared to give. You know that with Carl Froch, he's ready to give that last drop of blood. I just wonder, and this is not doing a great fighter a disservice, I just wonder after going through that turmoil and having in his own head retired, because he told me that, how that affects him mentally, and when it gets to the 8th and 9th rounds where he really pulled it out first time round, whether he can go as deep in the well as he did first time round. That's one of the fascinating elements of this fight. If he can, then we've got another classic on our hands.
I mean, you mentioned the well, you mentioned the crowd earlier, which I felt it was probably the only time I think I've significantly felt a crowd's passion for a fighter actually pull the fighter through. I think the 9th, 10th round, the crowd in Herning was insane, and Kessler almost seemed to respond to it. Did you feel that?
Yeah, and I've been talking to Mikkel about that notion and how when you land a punch, when you are that desperately tired in the 8th, 9th, 10th rounds that can really turn a fight around because it was so close at that stage, when everything you land, and sometimes when you land only the wind of a left hook, the crowd go mad, and that's enough to just give you that buoyancy that you need to get you through that last minute of the round. And yet you've got Carl landing solid shots against the backdrop of almost silence, and that's soul destroying for the fighter who's doing that. And this time everything's reversed, and Kessler remembers that against Joe Calzaghe.
You mentioned the sound of the shots. I think that's one of the things that will never leave me, the sound of the shots, the leather landing there. I think more than any other fight, you know, there was like a really consistent, hard, thwacking sound all the way through that night. I mean, it was almost like an unbelievable level of violence, wasn't it? I mean, and to watch it back, it wasn't necessarily like Gatti Ward in how frequent the attacks were and stuff, but it was just a real air of brutality, wasn't there?
It was, and it was the quality of each of the single shots that was going in, and it wasn't just two men flailing away and fighting on instinct, although their instinct is so strong and so warrior-like. It was the power and the meaning and the significance of each of the punches. And you know, we do radio commentary, so we're all about sound, and so we need those sound effects. And there were a couple of times during the commentary when I just eased off just momentarily, which is dangerous for a radio commentator, but just to let those shots and the body shots in particular, you could hear the thwack and the thud, and it was like a heavy lump, a heavy brick had dropped onto the canvas, and these shots were landing into the stomach. And occasionally we go across to the corners in between rounds, and I remember very early on, it might have been in between the 3rd and the 4th, in between the 4th and the 5th, we went to Carl's corner, and he virtually screamed at Robert McCracken, complaining about the strength of Kessler's body punches. And quite often when we're at ringside, okay, we're so privileged, we're 6, 7, 10 feet away. Even from that vantage point, you can't sometimes quite tell the real body-breaking significance of a body shot. You know, with a head shot, you see the head jerked backwards, or the fella goes over or totters away, but sometimes the body shots go in, and it's a mark of their warrior spirit that they can hide the agony that they're feeling. Because when he sat back down in that corner and he said to Robert, he said, I can't use the words here, but he said that body shot is a bleep, and that was him. I mean, in a sense, just coming to terms with what was going to be happening for the next 8 rounds, you know. And they're amazing people. These I worship the ground that they tread, because they just have. It seems to me that there is no line beyond which they won't go to chase a victory.
Brilliant. 12 rounds to go. Brilliant. Thanks.
Get involved with all the best boxing banter at our forum, and that's forum.boxingnewsonline.net.